If you haven't seen the first video that I made on the Suncross, which is Deepwoken's equivalent of the sun, please be sure to watch that video first. You'll find it in the description and in the top right of your screen. Regardless, in that video, I ultimately concluded that the Suncross was either the corpse of a celestial floating in the sky, or that the Suncross served as the celestial afterlife. This, in my opinion, was the best two conclusions I could have made, considering the lack of information on the Suncross at the time, but of course, I was dead wrong. In fact, Archmage himself went ahead and added in new dialogue specifically to disprove the theories that I posed in my video. Touché. However, I wasn't all wrong. In fact, I was much closer to the actual solution than I originally thought. Now, rearmed with new knowledge, I'm going to clear up the discrepancies in my last video and hopefully set the Suncross straight. You ready? If you are, be sure to subscribe because we've just passed the absurd milestone of 10,000 subscribers. Thank you so much, this means the world to me, and it's only up from here. Alright, so let's first address the reason I'm making this video in the first place. Samiel, the Star Kindred Oathgiver in-game, has been granted a whole new tree of dialogue. This is largely because of my video. While Samiel was in dire need of some touch-ups, this dialogue has been revamped with my video in mind specifically. Thankfully, this finally means that we've received some actual dialogue relating to the Suncross in-game. What's that? You want to see it? Of course! Let's dive straight into what Samiel has to say. What happened to the Celestial? It was found near death in the Rodlands, embedded in this cocoon. We have done our best to preserve it. Was it crucified when it was found? They smile. We believe so, yes. Many of the Celestials we have found are in a similar state. We believe it to be a form of self-imposed martyrdom. A Celestial martyr? Indeed, it is surely providence that they arrived as they did and blessed us with the gift of their ichor. It is all the more reason to venerate and protect their gift. What's the significance of these Suncross within the faith? As you might notice with this particular Celestial, it bears a striking resemblance, no? We believe it to be a message from the Celestials. We must uphold the light in their absence. The Suncross is symbolic of the sacrifices made by our gods, their struggle and their divinity. Is the Suncross a Celestial? They smile. Some sects of the faith believe so. I cannot fault such a line of thinking, but having spent so much time in the presence of a Celestial, I do not believe it to be so. To the senses of we Star Kindred Oathsworn, it does not seem to possess ichor. We do not feel the same connection to it that we do to the Celestials through our vow. So, in a sense, we interpret its gift through the gifts of the Celestials. What about the Moon's Eye? The Moon's Eye is sacred, of this there is no doubt. Within the Star Kindred faith, the Moon's Eye is the gateway to the Promised Land that we will journey to, upon the revival of the Celestials and the banishment of the deep. We believe that the souls of deceased Celestials make their way to the Moon's Eye to make preparations for the Promised Day. It's comforting to think of them looking down on us from it, no? Alright, there's a lot to address here. For starters, let's touch on the Celestial that we can find in the basement of the Celestial High Church. Turns out that I was indeed correct in assuming that the Celestial fell from the sky in this cocoon-looking thing, but that's about all I was correct about, really. The core of my two theories revolved around the sun crosses the Celestial was tied to, and I theorized that these crosses may have fallen from the heavens inside the cocoons with the Celestials, meaning that the Celestials were the ones who were punishing their own race. This, sadly, was incorrect. Yes, Samiel says that he just found the Celestial that way, but I later confirmed with Natoons that it was indeed the Star Kindred who tied up the Celestial onto the cross, so this Samiel guy's a liar. Although this miss does bring us good fortune, for you see, there is indeed a different reason why the Star Kindred value the Suncross so. It's the Celestial itself, not the crosses. In fact, this Celestial specifically, for you see, this Celestial's design is intentional. It's morphed itself into looking like the Suncross. Ichor, as a power source, runs parallel to the song, or at least opposes it. Ichor is obviously celestial blood. While mankind wields the song, the Celestials use their blood, their ichor, to transmutate their own bodies. This Celestial specifically chose to transform itself into something resembling a Suncross. Why? Because it worships it. This tells us that the Suncross is, at the very least, important enough to the Celestials that at least one Celestial literally mutated itself to look exactly like it. The Suncross undoubtedly has some sort of purpose, and it's a lot more than just decoration. As to what that purpose is, Besides my failed attempt at solving these sun crosses, my two conclusions as to the true purpose of the Suncross were largely false. The Suncross is neither a celestial itself, nor the celestial afterlife. I'm sorry, no E-core radiates from the Suncross, nor do celestial souls head to the Suncross when they pass. This was specifically debunked in the dialogue I just read. In fact, Samiel says something particularly interesting here. The Star Kindred place value in the Suncross due to its symbolic value as a message from the gods. They interpret the Suncross through the gifts of the Celestials, so it's abundantly clear that we're not going to get the actual purpose of the Suncross from the Star Kindred. I like to think that this dialogue has been added to push us in a different direction. So if we're not going to figure out what the Suncross is from the Star Kindred, just how are we going to solve this thing? Well, it turns out that there is something I got bang on the money, the Soothsayer dialogue. In case you need a reminder, in the first Suncross video, I harkened back to a Ministry NPC who trades vague, lore-heavy dialogue and Ministry reputation for your knowledge. This NPC spouted off a couple lines which I pinned down as potentially relating to the Suncross. Not only was I correct, I was even more correct than I originally thought. All so clear. The wandering star, its movement so calculated, its warmth, its light, such beauty, such intent. Wandering star feels very, very unvague though, unless it hasn't had much thought put into it. Wandering star is probably the most on-the-nose crumb of Suncross lore. That's right, I'd unknowingly hit a home run, I just didn't know it at the time. While the emphasis I placed on calculated and intent was admittedly somewhat misguided, I was spot on when I focused specifically on the phrase, the wandering star. Natoon said as much himself, stating that it was on the nose. Turns out I've been placing far too much emphasis on the relationship between the Star Kindred and the Celestials. Instead, the truth behind the Suncross lies within its orbit. Yes, that's right. The Suncross's orbit, which I initially dismissed as completely unimportant, actually holds the key to the truth that we're looking for. You see, I was talking to Natoons, as you do, pondering whether or not the Suncross actually does have an innate purpose like the Moon's Eye does. He confirmed, yes, it does indeed, which was expected, but he revealed something earth-shattering. The Suncross and the Moon's Eye do indeed rotate in mirrored positions, but not with the same orbit. How? Well, let's take another look at the diagram. As you can see, there's clearly space for the Moon's Eye to rotate on the right here, and that is exactly where it orbits indeed. However, Natoons dropped a bombshell on me when he revealed that the Moon's Eye, while occupying this empty space, orbits the world a little differently. If we were to accurately draw the Moon's Eye's orbit on the right side, it would look a bit like this. See the difference? The lines aren't there. Something is pulling the Suncross towards Lumen and then towards the heavens. The quest to solve the Suncross now boils down to this question. What is drawing the Suncross to rotate this way? We have other questions too. I mean, Toons confirmed that the Celestial transformed its own body into the shape of a Suncross in the form of worship. Why would a Celestial worship the Suncross? Is it that important? Is it a coincidence that the Celestial landed near the Star Kindred specifically? Do I have answers to these questions? Well, of course I do. Otherwise I wouldn't be making— I don't. I've got no answers. In fact, I've never been more lost in my entire life. This simply isn't currently solvable. I'm lacking critical pieces of information that make solving the Suncross for certain, well, completely impossible. According to Natoons, it's not completely solvable right now, so that's that, really. While we now know that the Suncross's rotation is key to its actual purpose, there's still one thing we're missing, which is the actual reason as to why it's rotating that way. Duh. Although, we do know that the term wandering star is quite relevant to the Suncross. I'm sure you can put the pieces together here. I'm going to go ahead and assume that the Suncross's status as wandering is referring to its strange orbit. Wandering is also a very particular word to use. However, even that simple conclusion could potentially be untrue. I'm all for theorizing, but flying blind is where I draw the line. This is where the Suncross theories end for now. What's that? Talk about my final Suncross theory. It's not done yet. Well, I do plan to talk about it eventually. Okay. Well, I suppose this series will need a part 3.